Welcome to the Birth to 3 program orientation. To support your learning, we've gathered a variety of resources that will extend and enhance what is addressed here. Links will be placed in the chat when you see a corresponding icon on the bottom of the slide. After engaging with this content, we encourage you to reach out to others within your program and beyond to support you in your learning journey. You can also request specific follow-up to address any questions or needed clarifications. The Birth to 3 program operations guide is included in the Read portion of this bundle. This can be found on our state website. This provides a wealth of information, 94 pages, including links to even more resources and content to help you keep the learning going. Orientation to the Birth to 3 program integrates evidence-based practices, teaming and coaching in the natural learning environment in the day-to-day Birth to 3 program process. We will be overviewing the requirements of both state and federal law throughout each stage of the process, but also exploring what the practices look like when carried out with families and each other. The 5 basic steps listed on this diagram are covered in an additional 6 sections. We've broken the evaluation and assessment step into 2 different sections as a way to highlight family assessment and authentic assessment practices. There are 3 objectives for section 1. At the conclusion of this section, you will be able to recognize that the core foundational purpose of the Birth to 3 program is to build the capacity of parents to support their child's development. Additionally, you will be able to identify key characteristics of primary coach approach to teaming in natural learning environments and be able to explain the importance of parental rights, including prior written notice and parental consent procedures. As a way to keep you engaged in this learning experience, we have built in knowledge checks. A link to the knowledge check form will be made available in the chat, so you can use this along the way. If you have 2 screens, it may be helpful to have the form opened up on a second screen. If not, simply minimize and maximize your screen when it's time for the knowledge checks. Please note that many of the questions are required and will need to be answered before you submit the form. You will be able to see and save your results after submission. Within this form, you can capture both key takeaways as well as any questions you have at the end of a section. We will begin today by talking about infants and toddlers and their parents and caregivers, the people who this program was designed for. Let's begin by thinking about what babies and toddlers need to thrive, be happy, healthy, and participating in their daily life. So to be happy, healthy, participating, and thriving, what are the tasks of the infant or toddler? What would you see them doing? Think about this individually or with your team. Pause the training to jot down your thoughts. Now let's consider then what the tasks of the parent are to ensure that a child is developing into a happy and healthy child. What should we add to the second column? Again, pause the recording to capture your thoughts. Now let's add the variable of a disability. Think about some of the disabilities that you are aware of and the impact on children within this age range. How does this influence the tasks of the parent? What additional tasks might we list? Keep these various tasks in mind as we continue on. Thinking of the different tasks you identified for the child, let's see how they compare with the 3 child outcomes measured by early intervention programs nationally. The Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, child outcomes encompass functional skills and behaviors that are meaningful for a child's participation in everyday routines. They cut across developmental domains to represent the integrated nature of how children develop, learn, and thrive. These outcomes provide a framework for describing and consistently measuring children's functional skills and behaviors across settings and situations. Where would the different tasks that you identified fall within these three outcome areas? Which would you say land in outcome 1, positive, social, emotional skills? What about in the second outcome, acquisition and use of knowledge and skills? The third, takes appropriate action to meet needs. We aren't going into details on these three outcomes today. You can learn more in the handout where you will find a link to the child outcome step-by-step video. This is an excellent video to watch that provides an overview of each of the three outcomes. I should remind you about the yellow icon at the bottom. Whenever you see that at the bottom of the screen, it indicates that there is a corresponding resource or handout. For families, the goal of early intervention and early childhood special education is to enable them to provide care for their children and have the resources they need to participate in their own desired family and community activities. Through an interactive process, which included extensive input from stakeholders, the Early Childhood Outcome Center identified these 5 family outcomes to support this goal. A survey is used to collect this data directly from families. Now let's consider the tasks you identified for parents and caregivers. How do they align with the OSEP family outcomes, which is indicator 4? Families understand their child's strengths, abilities, and special needs. Families know their rights and advocate effectively for their child. Families help their child develop and learn. Families have support systems. And families access desired services, programs, and activities in their community. Now, after seeing this list of family outcomes, what other tasks might you add to your list? Early intervention, or the Birth to 3 program, is governed by federal and state law. Federal law began in 1975 with Public Law 94-142, Education for All Handicapped Children Act, which established FAPE, a free and appropriate public education, and rights for families. Congress established the program of early intervention for infants and toddlers with disabilities in 1986 in recognition of an urgent and substantial need to enhance the development of identified infants and toddlers and to minimize their potential for developmental delay, reduce the educational cost to our society, including our nation's schools, by minimizing the need for special education and related services after these infants and toddlers reach school age, minimize the likelihood of institutionalization for individuals, and maximize the potential for their independent living in society, and enhance the capacity of families to meet the special needs of their infants and toddlers. We've come a long way since 1986. We no longer use the term handicapped in IDEA, but it's startling to see how virtually unchanged the findings of Congress are in the most current authorization of IDEA, which was passed in 2004 as Public Law 108-446. In addition to the previous congressional findings of 1986, in 2004, the law expressly acknowledges the significant brain development that occurs during the child's first 3 years of life, and has added one finding which reads, to enhance the capacity of state and local agencies and service providers to identify, evaluate, and meet the needs of all children, particularly minority, low-income, inner-city, and rural children, and infants and toddlers in foster care. In addition to the federal law, Birth to 3 programs are also mandated through state laws and regulations. Within each of these, the procedures the program is to implement and the rights of families are explained. Links to these documents are included as resources, and we encourage you to access these important documents. Many have found it helpful to keep these links saved as bookmarks on their computer to reference as needed. We will be referencing both the Part C regulations and DHS 90 throughout this training. A key aspect of the law guiding early intervention practices is that services must be provided in the child's natural environment. According to Part C regulations, natural environments are defined as settings that are natural or typical for a same-age child without a disability. When this was first made law, natural environments tended to be seen as just the location a child was in, such as the child's home or childcare. We now understand that natural environments are much more than just the location the child is in. In this definition of a child's natural environment from Robb and Dunst in the Journal of Early Intervention, natural environments are the everyday routines, experiences, and activities that occur in different social and non-social contexts as a part of family and community life. Considering the definition just shared, which of these pictures would you say represent part of a child's natural environment? If you said yes, you are correct. All of these are part of a child's natural environment. All the activities, routines, and places that a child spends time with the people that he or she is closest to are part of the child's natural environment. This pie chart provides some insight into why our work in the Birth to 3 program focuses on building the capacity of parents and other caregivers. Infants and toddlers spend the majority of their time with their parents and other caregivers, such as child care providers. Approximately 49% of infants and toddlers' time is spent with their daily routines, such as eating or playing. Approximately 50% of their daily time is spent sleeping. The 1% of their daily time that is left for an interventionist to spend with a child is minimal, just this little red slice at the bottom of the pie chart. Given that, our work must include the parents and other caregivers who are with the children the majority of the time. We must also tap into the learning opportunities that exist within typical daily routines. This quote from an occupational therapist is an excellent reminder of a key aspect of the Birth to 3 program. What makes the program distinct from others is the emphasis on building the capacity of the parent and other caregivers of these young children with disabilities. The role of the Birth to 3 program early interventionist is to help the parents and primary caregivers shape their vision for how they want their child to grow and learn and participate in everyday, ordinary life. We also strive to help parents articulate that vision so that parent outcomes drive their support and services. A key piece of research that guides early intervention practices comes from Gerald Mahoney from his journal article, Relationship-Focused Intervention, Enhancing the Role of Parents in Children's Developmental Intervention. His research found that parent responsiveness had the most powerful impact on developmental outcomes of children receiving early intervention services. Positive parent responsiveness even had more impact than the early intervention services provided. It was Mahoney's research, along with family-centered practices, that led Dathan Rush and Melissa Sheldon to develop their work in primary coach approach to teaming. This is the evidence-based approach for working with families that is utilized in Wisconsin. Let's check your knowledge regarding natural environments. Read the two statements, which is true. There is a matching question on your knowledge check form that we discussed when we began. Once you submit at the very end, you will know the answers. This is Wisconsin's Birth to Three program mission statement. Take a minute to read the mission statement to yourself, and as you do, identify the words or phrases that stand out as key points about the work done by the Birth to Three program. If you are with your team members, pause the training to discuss this. Now, I'm going to ask you to review Wisconsin's Birth to Three program guiding principles. The link to this will be placed in the chat. Pause the recording in order to read through these on your own and consider which principle or principles really seem to match your professional values and why. If you're with your teammates, take a minute to discuss this. Another knowledge check. True or false? One of the purposes of early intervention identified by Congress was to build family capacity in supporting their child's learning. Go back to your knowledge check form to record your answer. Complete the sentence below by filling in the blank. Research has identified that the factor having the most impact on a child's developmental outcomes is parent. Evidence-based practices within early intervention are built on research from the field of family-centered practice. At the core of family-centered practices is the belief that all families are capable and competent, no matter what their lifestyle choices. We encourage you to reflect on your own values and beliefs about parents, their lifestyles, and their capacity to parent their child. Everyone's belief system is significantly impacted by their own family of origin and life experiences. As you reflect on your own values and beliefs, it's not unusual to find that there are some life choices that families make that are in conflict with how you were raised or live. That's to be expected. But it is critical to not let that get in the way of your work with families. The first step in avoiding this is to be aware of your own values and beliefs about families, parenting choices, mothers, fathers, etc. This is an important topic for teams to explore together. It is part of being a reflective organization. We encourage you to take this statement back to your team for a discussion. One element of family-centered practice is ensuring parents know and understand their rights. To transition into thinking about this, let's begin by thinking about a time that you needed to exercise your rights. What was the circumstance? What helped this to be successful? If you're with your team, pause the recording to share these circumstances. Keep your own experience in mind as we consider parent-child rights established for the Birth to Three program purposes. Parental rights are the cornerstone of the laws governing the Birth to Three program. Parental rights in the Birth to Three program covers 5 areas: confidentiality, records maintenance, retention, destruction, and access, dispute resolution options, prior written notice, and parental consent. We will now review the rights families have in each of these 5 areas. More detailed information is included in the handout, Parent and Child Rights. Here are a few things you'll want to know about confidentiality in the Birth to Three program. Confidentiality is assured from the point of referral to the Birth to Three program and continues throughout the family's involvement in the program and beyond. Personally identifiable information includes any information used on its own or with other information to identify, contact, or locate a single person. Birth to Three programs are mandated to follow the confidentiality rules under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA. County Birth to Three programs are required to have processes in place for records maintenance, retention, destruction, as well as the release of information, which is the access to records by legal guardians and others. From time to time, a parent may disagree with the decision made. They have the option to do one of these less formal processes or a more formal process that we will cover next. They may choose to talk directly with the person or persons involved, discuss the issue with the service coordinator, request an IFS meeting to rediscuss or reconsider the decision, contact the county director or program coordinator, or contact the county administrator. There are 3 formal dispute resolution options that may be a better match to the situation and are available to families. Mediation is a voluntary process that allows 2 parties to work together to resolve a dispute. A mediator, a neutral person, helps the 2 parties to communicate and make joint decisions. Mediators do not make the decisions. Due process hearings are hearings with an administrative law judge who hears both sides and makes a binding decision. IDEA complaints are made to the department indicating that one or more of the laws have been broken. We will now look at prior written notice and parental consent in more detail. These 2 procedural safeguards are applied to numerous situations throughout the Birth to 3 program process, from intake through transition, so it's important that personnel have a good understanding of what, when, and how to do both. The discussion with the family and documentation of the discussion is known as prior written notice. It is made to propose or refuse, to initiate or change decisions made about any of the following situations: the identification of the child, evaluation of the child, placement of the child, or the provision of services to the child and family. It must occur a reasonable time prior to the Birth to 3 program acting on a decision. This allows the family enough time to request a new discussion through an IFS meeting or otherwise dispute the decision made. The intent of the prior written notice requirement is to assure family participation in the Birth to 3 program process, support the family's understanding of the decisions made regarding their child and family, support family members in sharing the conversation and decisions made with others, and assure families understand their rights regarding what the Birth to 3 program offers, including refusing consent, filing an IDEA complaint, and participating in mediation or a due process hearing. The prior written notice discussion and documentation includes the following 5 components: the decision being proposed or refused, the reason for taking the action, the information the proposed action is based upon, the right to refuse consent to evaluate or service provision, all procedural safeguards, so a copy of their rights supports this. Prior written notice must be provided in the native language of the family unless it is clearly not feasible to do so. Prior written notice is to be provided at 7 points in the IFSP process: screenings, evaluations, assessments, eligibility, services, transition, and exiting the program. We've created a matching handout to share with some example prior written notice statements in various situations. I will just click through these quickly to give you an idea of the elements, and you are invited to refer to your handout at a later time. You may also wish to pause the recording at any point to read through a statement thoroughly. Consent by the legal guardian is really the foundation of the parental rights in the Birth to 3 program. The importance of parental consent stems from the beliefs that parents are the decision makers in the family, that parents know what is best for their children and family, and that parents have the right to know who is being given information about their child. There are several times during participation in the Birth to 3 program that parents or legal guardians are asked to provide consent. When the Birth to 3 program conducts screenings, evaluations, and assessments, provides services, or requests access to insurance, or provides access to information by others. Time to revisit your knowledge check form. True or false? A release of information is required before sharing the results of the evaluation with the referral source. Record your answers on your form. In which of the following situations is parental consent not needed? Here is one last one for this section. True or false? Prior written notice must include the reason why an action is being taken or not taken. As you think about your current program practices, here are some questions for you to reflect on. The questions at the end of each section may be helpful to facilitate team discussions within your program.